tzaddik. This is the difference between when we are referring to the teva, the level of nature, and then there's the level that's doesn't have to do with teva, that's beyond the idea of teva. Just like in Gan Eden, there was the level of Gan Eden was the highest level, but then afterwards there was the level that's higher than the level of Gan Eden, the level that is La'avda L'Shamra, that Adam Rishon came. And this is all connected with what he says, Hasam Nafscheinu B'chaim, that he's going to explain how this is all in a way of that the Chaim that he adds the Nafscheinu to is in such a type of way that it is okay. Let's wait till he explains it. So let's go to Ois Hey, line 4, page 7. We could say possibly these two ideas of nature versus higher than nature, the way the world was created, even the level of Gan Eden before the Chet, as opposed to what Adam Rishon added through his avodah, is also the explanation of Medrash. Initially, it arose in Hashem's thought to create the world with the midah of judgment, justice, severity. And afterwards, he combined and added the attribute of mercy, which Chassidus explains it's not just that was a hava mina, that Hashem thought so, but he didn't do it that way. Rather, initially, there was a level of midas hadin, and then afterwards there was also added to it midas harachman. And Shariach V'Emunah is the place where he explains this, that there was both aspects, both parts involved in the creation. According to what's explained in Shariach V'Emunah, Shem midas hagvura v'atzimtzum v'shem elokim. The name of Hashem's midah of gvura and tzimtzum, his severity, his might, and his constriction is the name elokim. Hari movement says understood. Shapirish the all of machshava livres oilam midas hadin. The meaning of what it says, that it arose in his thought to create the world with the midah of judgment. Hu inyan habriya kifishi mitzad shem elokim b'gematria teva. It's the level of the creation, the way it is as a result of the name Elokim, which is the numerical equivalent of Teva, nature, what we've been talking about the whole time, that there's the nature of the world itself. Shazel Shleimus HaTeva, that's the perfection of nature. But even though the world had the level of perfection of nature, there's higher than that. Higher than this, the idea that he partnered with him, the midah of mercy, the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, like it's explained over there in Shariach V'Emunah. Where do we see the midah of Hashem's mercy? In what way, in what aspect is Hashem's mercy revealed? The mercy of Hashem is when he reveals himself beyond the level of nature. And that revelation takes the form through tzaddikim and the signs and wonders that's in the Torah. This means Shegilu Shem Havaya Huayidei Inyan Anisim Oisis Umoifsim. The revelation of Yud Kei Vav Kei is through the miracles, through signs and wonders. And as this comes down from one generation to another generation through the tzaddik, who is the foundation of the world, that the tzaddik is the one that brings the midah of rachmim into the world, that we see through the tzaddik the signs and wonders, until a general miracle, in a way that all the ends of the earth see, meaning this is alluding to the release from imprisonment, both concerning the Alter Rebbe, like he's soon going to quote, And also, this is the same idea with the Friediger Rebbe's miracles and wonders that all saw the great miracle of his release from prison. Rebbe wrote in his famous letter on his release from prison that all the ends of the earth saw the great miracles that Hashem performed. בעניין זה, ובדוגמס החילוק והעילוי שבלימוד וידיעה בלקוס, הידי הנהגה ניסיס לגבי הלימוד והידיעה שהידי הנהגה טיביס. This idea is similar to the difference and the quality of the study and knowledge and godliness through a miraculous way of the world running, לגבי הלימוד והידיעה שהידי הנהגה טיביס, over the study and the knowledge that comes about through the natural way how the world runs. So the natural way, that is the Midas Hadin, and the level that's beyond nature is the idea of the miracles that take place. So now we're going to bring this back to the pasuk of Asam Nafshenu B'chaim that we asked. The nefesh is chai be'etzim. The nefesh is essentially alive. Why do you need to place it into life? It's already possessed of the idea of life, but rather we're talking about a higher level of life over here. Vav. According to this will also be understood the explanation of the pasuk that he places our soul in life. Though the soul is essentially alive, its very essence is an essence of life. Until the ultimate perfection of the life of the godly soul. Like the Alter Rebbe says at the beginning of Perek Beis in Tanya, that the second soul amongst Yidden is a part of Hashem from above Mamish. It's still something that's out of and related to the nature of the godly soul. From the perspective of the nature of the godly soul, meaning, what is its nature? Like, the nature is that I was created only to serve my Maker, so that's part of the nature of the Nefesh Elokis. Top of page Gimel here, it does its service until it does the ultimate perfection of the service of tzaddik. Even when the soul is complete and doing the avoid of tzaddikim, like we said, the nefesh, which is perfect, nothing missing, nothing lacking, does a perfect avoid of tzaddikim. He places it into life, an additional level. Shakadosh Baruch Hu oizroi that Hashem assists him with some as nafshi b'chaim ba'ofen shu neged heipach ulamayla ma'teva. He places his soul in life in a way that it opposes, quoting the Sfornos Pirish, this pasuk that we said in the beginning of the Maimer, which is the opposite and beyond nature. What is this higher level that could be higher than the avoid of tzaddikim? That's the inspiration from above. That we say Hasam Nafshenu. Hashem is the one that places it. So it's Hashem's inspiration. Hashem is assisting us for the service of tshuva. Similar to the teaching of Baal Shem Tov concerning the heavenly voice that goes out every day and says, return wayward children. So that Baskoil gives an awakening from above. That's Hasam. He is the one that's Sam Nafshenu B'chaim. He is placing our soul into the life, into the level of tshuva. It's the awakening for tshuva, the inspiration for tshuva that reaches the essence of the soul. This awakening for tshuva, this inspiration for tshuva, this is something that the mazel of the neshama hears, which is the essence of the soul, is aware of this voice that comes min hashamayim. It becomes a directive and a sign Shegam Sham Tzarech Linat Tshuva, that also there, also in the level of the perfect part of the nefesh alakis, the way it's in that state of perfection, even the level of the etzem of nefesh alakis, it needs the idea of tshuva. How come? The etzem is perfect. It's like the tzaddikim that need to do tshuva. K'may also lasav tzaddikai b'tiyufta, similar to what it says the Mashiach is going to come to make tzaddikim do tshuva. K'may shenis bar le'ela was explained in the previous mimer to this. Similar to what we said earlier in this mimer, in Ois Gimel, even when the world is standing in a perfect state, the world, it was created full and complete. Like in Gan Eden prior to the sin of Deit Sadas, in a Gam Sham Tzarech in an Akriya V'Atziva V'Anisinas Koyach, also there needs to be the calling and the command and the empowerment. The boy Nishtachva V'Nechra Nivrchov Ne'avayaseinu, come, let us prostrate ourselves and bow down and kneel before Hashem our Maker. So there's, on top of the greatness of Gan Eden, there's this level as well. So just like it's in the world, there's a higher level than what was created, so too concerning the perfection of the nefesh. Also over there we need to affect the idea that he placed our soul in life against nature. And this is affected amongst the nations of the world, like the Sforno writes. What does that mean amongst the nations of the world? Shagam Sham, even when you're dealing with the nations of the world, the idea of transforming darkness to light and bitter to sweet. That the intentional sins will turn into merits. This is against nature. How does this come about? This is against nature, because this is by taking our nefesh, which is perfect from the natural perspective, and placing it in a greater level, in a level of chayim. Now the Rebbe adds, b'chayim b'patach daike. In Lashon Kodesh, there's a difference if you use the prefix be or ba. By saying a prefix ba, it's as if it says shezo b'makim hey hayidi. It's as if it has a definitive article, as if it's saying in the life. If it would say b'chaim, it would mean in life. B'chaim, it's as if it's saying b'hachaim, in the life. Chaim hayiduim, the well-known life. That means a life that is well known, a life that is a miraculous type of life. Even higher in this Shem Havai, the name Yudkivov, like was mentioned earlier in Oishei, the beginning of this morning's shir from Sharich V'Emunah, that this is the idea of the miracles and the Sam Nafshenu B'Chaim is a level that's Shem Havai, that's higher than the nature and limitations of the world. So the second part of the pasuk is v'loy nasan lamoit ragleinu. Indians that pile on this effect, gam shloy nasan lamoit ragleinu, also that he didn't allow that our legs should collapse, or even not even collapse, but even start leaning. Leaning indicates just the beginning of a collapse. Even that it doesn't allow, like he's soon going to explain. Top of page Dalet. Even the part of the godly soul that's not the idea of the understanding and the comprehension of the godly soul, and not even the emotions of the heart, but the level of action. And the level of the action that we're talking about, there's a difference in level of action. There's more talented and fine action that one does with the hands. It's not even the manner of action like one would do with the hands, but rather action the way it's in the feet, which is a very coarse and low type of action. In action itself, it is a very low level. It's the lowest level. Even in a place where there's nothing lower than it. Also over there we affect that it doesn't collapse, meaning it should not just lamoit from the word collapsing, but lamoit from the word netia. It shouldn't even lean away from the straight path. Like the expression of this farno, that it shouldn't be able to, heaven forbid, push us away from our God, like the Sforno explained in the latter half of the pasuk. First half was about standing in the presence and against the nations of the world, and the second part was not to go and be pushed away from the Eibishter. Even the beginning, like we're saying, it's only leaning, even that not. Not even in the lowest part, which is only the foot. Though it's the lowest level in the godly soul, that's why it's also the lowest level in the body itself. So even the lowest level, even over there, there's no issue with the nations of the world, the klippos, in any way pulling us aside, because our chayim, or our nefesh, is placed b'chayim in the level of Shem Yud Kivavke, in the level of hachayim, in the level of Anog and Nisis, in the level of Baal Tshuva. Zayin, line 12. This could be the possible connection between this pasuk and the meaning of this pasuk with the idea of the imprisonment and redemption, because the Frierdiker Rebbe said this, the Maimer, with this title in connection with his release from imprisonment. This is one of the Mamorim that the Frierdiker Rebbe said. Itaka said a few years later, but still it's in celebration and marking his imprisonment and redemption. So what's the connection? Then, during the time of the imprisonment and the redemption, there was the actual placing his life, in his soul into life. We needed to ensure that the Frierdiker Rebbe would survive. It was necessary to place our soul. That was in a state and situation of endangerment, of the opposite of life, that it should be in life. Even though all this was amongst the nations of the world and against nature, like the expression of this Sforno, so he was facing these enemies. He was facing the nations of the world that was opposing him. Also, there was the idea of not allowing our leg even to lean. That the event of the imprisonment of the Frierdiker Rebbe did not affect the weakening, heaven forbid, in the avoid of spreading Yiddishkeit and spreading the wellsprings, both in the Soviet Union and in all the other countries. Like it's known, what the one who was imprisoned, in other words, the Frierdiker Rebbe commanded when he was going to imprisonment, they should not allow for any weakening in spreading Torah and fulfillment mitzvahs, that was done there. Then, like it's also brought down the notes and the writings in the diary of the one who was imprisoned and redeemed, the Frierdiker Rebbe. Yet, how does this apply now? After there was the redemption the first time around. In 1927, Yud Beis Tammuz, when these days are remembered, and therefore they are done. They are happening again every single year. Like it's known, the explanation of the Arizal. And it's also understood from what's explained in many Mamar Chassidus, that the recalling of what took place in Yud Beis Tammuz, that causes the very same spiritual side of Yud Beis Tammuz to recur. The Arizal is not talking about Yud Beis Tammuz, obviously. He's talking about that the pasuk is a pasuk from the Megillah, and that thing applies also in not just Megillah, but also in the I haven't put my mind for a second. Not just as it applies to the Megillah, but also applies to every event and every situation that we have marking a certain day. The remembrance of that day causes that same Hamshacha to come down. So the Rebbe says in line 28, this idea comes about not just in its simple sense, or not just in a simple sense. It doesn't happen in its simple sense with all the negative connotations of what took place then, but rather in a way of broadness. Meaning comfort in the physical, in the literal sense. From the physical comfort, it brings the spiritual comfort. That through the broadness in the spiritual, so then comes a state and situation that we become even closer to Hashem. Like Yaakov Avinu said that when Hashem saved him, so then that made him have a feeling of greater closeness to Hashem, and he was experiencing greater chesed. And then, as a result of that, Yaakov said, "Katointi mikol chsadim," like we said, I become minimized by it. Was nirgesh yoisra bittul. Then the bittlus felt even more like it's brought down the Geras HaKodesh, the second Geras HaKodesh base that we mentioned earlier. The closer one is to Hashem, the greater one realizes how constricted and limited they are in comparison to Hashem. And the practical sense it means, he says on the top of page Tesvav, when we realize that we could have accomplished so much and so much more, since it ceased all the obstacles and the concealments and coverings that were then, so we realize how much more we could have accomplished than was accomplished in the times of the Frierdiker Rebbe when he was dealing with all those challenges. Therefore, there's a necessary encouragement and inspiration of this day of Beis Tammuz. It's worthy to establish it as a day to inspire us in spreading Torah and fulfilling mitzvahs. In a way that 10 are sitting together and involved in Torah, like it's explained in the Maimer that was given by the Frierdiker Rebbe along with the letter for the first celebration of Yud Beis Tammuz, in other words, a year later, Tafresh Peiches. That the Frierdiker Rebbe encourages the idea of Torah study in public. In a manner that's also connected with doing tzedakah in a public way. Like the Maimer concludes, the primary thing is also being involved in Torah one another. Being involved in Torah one another, that's another form of tzedakah and doing acts of kindness. And this affects that we're redeemed from the constriction and the narrow confines. Like all the different explanations, like we said in the Maimer, there's many different levels of how we explain the Meitzah. Immediately it's affected that he will respond in the broadness of Hashem in all matters, in the study of Torah, fulfillment of mitzvahs, in all your ways you shall know. Chazal say the name Geula is one, so it applies all over and everywhere. And moving it's understood from Gula Protz and the from the individual redemption that we mentioned earlier. It was also a general redemption, not just his own personal redemption of Friedrich Rebbe, but it was a general redemption for all the matters that's connected with the particular situation that they were then found themselves in Golus under the issues of fulfillment of Torah, mitzvahs, because not only myself did Hashem redeem. So it was all Klal Yisrael, etc. We come to the true and complete redemption, Geula Klal Yisrael Prata, the general Geula to all its details of the Karav Mamish, and soon Mamish will be as Mashiach that came in the coming of Mashiach. Yavav Yigaleinu V'Elcheinu Kam Yisrael Artzeinu will come and redeem us and lead us upright to our land.